I am a creature of lonely shorelines and faraway horizons. Luckily, I grew up in the Great Lakes, so we've got a lot of both. And my vessel of choice is a 17.5-foot plastic sea kayak. They're amazing craft. They are designed to handle rough water, traveling long distances, surf, flat, calm mill ponds, do anything out of them. My favorite thing to do, though, is expeditioning. Loading up, backpacking gear, essentially, into this boat and going places. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. In spring of 2012, I took a little trip right after I graduated from university. I started in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, the Soo, traveled across the North Channel of Lake Huron, up the beautiful French River to the town of North Bay, the top of the watershed. Then I went down the Mattawa River to the confluence with the Ottawa, through the Canadian capital of Ottawa, through Montreal, down the St. Lawrence, to Quebec City, to my final ending destination of Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupré, Quebec. It was about 860 miles there or thereabouts, give or take, and it took me 34 days. So, let's get started. Here I am at the beginning of my trip, ready to go, early on a Sunday morning, a week and a day after I graduated. I was pumped. My entire life was packed away in that boat, everything I would need for, I was figuring 6 weeks away. Excited, energetic, pale, ready to have an adventure. And this was the type of moment I was looking for, the quiet peace where you can be really at one with the water, nothing standing in the way of that experience of traveling slowly through the wild places. And I really needed the time to think. I mean, I'd been so stressed with engineering school, and 3 days before my expedition began, my grandmother passed away after a long and tough fight with cancer. And I know that's what happens in life, death. It's that balance. Things happen. Everyone at some point in their life will be affected by it. But as I wrote this on my boat, as a memorial to my grandma. And as I went along through the sun and the water, it faded. Just as the sting of death was fading with it. It's always there. I always have that scar, emotionally. But the wild places allowed for that healing process. And the water, it's always changing. You can paddle the same bit of it every day for your entire life, and it's always a little bit different. And in the North Channel, in the Whalesback Channel, spectacular area, I paddled through it, and it's interesting because I paddled there almost a decade ago on my very first sea kayaking trip with a group from my school. And it was this epic terrain. We spent 4 days exploring it with a group of about 12 people. And it just seemed so big. And then when I came back to it after becoming a kayak instructor and spending so much time paddling, being in the water, I went from one end of it to the other in about 4 hours. It really made me realize how much I had changed as a person. Those horizons were still far away, and the shoreline was still spectacular, but I pulled them a bit closer. The trip was a major juxtaposition at times. I went from the wilderness of Lake Huron and the French River to this sort of urban camping, you could say, in Killarney. And my family, my friends who were following along could always tell when I was in a place of civilization because I would always post pictures of food online. Best fish and chips ever. If you're ever in Killarney, Ontario, stop by the Fisherman's Dock. Oh, so good. And there was a lot of food. You realize how much food means to you when you don't have the best of it, being out in the woods. And you will surprise yourself by how much you eat. Makes you really appreciate the little things, brownies, beer, donuts, fish and chips. Makes you appreciate the little things in life. I left the shores of Lake Huron where I'm the most comfortable, and I headed up the French River. And the French River is one of the old voyageur routes, the French-Canadian travel routes in canoes, and there's a lot of portages, or portages, as French Canadians will say. But there's a difference between a portage and a portage. Well, anyway, it's picking up a boat on your shoulder usually and hiking through the woods. And if it's graceful and elegant and you can do it in one trip, that's a portage. A portage, though, is when you're sweaty and being eaten by mosquitoes and slipping in the mud and slipping on the rocks. I did a lot more portaging than that. But as you can see, this was about 6 in the morning or so. This was in the town of North Bay. This was at the very top of the watershed. If I were to go west, I would end up back in Lake Huron. If I went east, I was down the Mattawa River into the Ottawa River watershed. This was really the turning point for me. And literally at this point, if I turned around, it was downhill all the way back to the lake, and the other way, it's downhill all the way to the sea. Didn't mean it was easy, though, even though I was going downhill all of a sudden. There's a lot of shallow water in the Mattawa River and a lot of swift water in the Ottawa, and there's a lot of dams as well. It's kind of a sad thing to see this mythical river, huge body of water, being stopped up by dams. It meant a lot of more portaging, which is a bit tough on your feet. Being locked in rubber boots all day and then having to walk, my chacos, it's a tough thing to do. And it was a continuous thing. That was near Hawkesbury, I believe. But the Ottawa River was when I really got into my stride. Having the current behind me, I was pushing longer and longer days, and I was really enjoying myself. I had cool days with a bit of cloud and rain. I really enjoyed. I could push myself. I had hot, sticky, humid days that were awful. You can imagine, sitting in a plastic bathtub with the sun beating on you with no shade all day. It's pretty miserable. The Ottawa had some interesting encounters. I got buzzed by a military helicopter near Petawawa. Met some really amazing people in towns. I had some women buy me tea and cookies at a yacht club where I stopped to get water. Had some really amazing times on the Ottawa River. Really peaceful times. And I began to realize that when the water goes calm, that means there's a dam. More portaging. But this is where you really appreciate humanity and nice people. I believe the world is full of nice, good people. You just have to be lucky enough to meet them. Here's an example of a water angel, as we call him. A guy named Sonny lived a little town on the side of the Ottawa River near a dam. And I essentially washed up on his beach by his house and went and asked him, hey, is there a portage trail? And after him going, no. He gave me a ride in his truck. Pretty nice guy. And quite literally, the next day, long story short, I ended up having to do a portage that would have been about 15 or 16 kilometers. It was on a road, so that was okay. But it was about 80 degrees, and mosquitoes around. And about 5 or 6 kilometers I got here, and I met this guy, Lori. Really great guy, and he gave me a ride down the rest of the way back to the water. He's an old canoeist, and he'd done a lot of trips, and it shows his strength of character. He was willing to be that close to me, because I really stunk at that point. This is a couple days out of the city of Ottawa. If you ever get the chance, go to Ottawa. It's a beautiful town, a lot of history, amazing architecture. Canadian Parliament is right there. And it goes that juxtaposition of the water and of life, of you have these peaceful moments all alone, and then all of a sudden you can be surrounded. And in Ottawa, all of a sudden I was walking through a park and people were out running and jogging, and here I come schlepping my boat behind me through the middle of town. I had 3 major metropolitan areas I went through. The main one is Ottawa, and then the second one was Montreal. Montreal is when I had a pretty harrowing experience. So I'll lead off with this quote by the French explorer, Samuel de Champlain. I never saw any torrent of water pour over with such force as this does, though it is not very high, being in some places only 1 or 2 fathoms, and at most 3. It descends, as it were, step by step, and wherever it falls from some small height, it boils up extraordinarily, owing to the force and speed of the water as it passes through the said rapid. He's describing the Lachine Rapids in Montreal. Lachine means the Chinese rapids, essentially. And it was the idea is kind of the Northwest Passage. That was the route to the Orient. And I knew they were there, but the current was so bad, I got pulled in. So that was, without a shadow of a doubt, the stupidest thing I've done on this entire expedition. I ran those rapids. Oh my God. That was stupid. That was stupid. That was
But that was the biggest whitewater I've ever run, and I ran it. If I see kayak, oh my god, so stupid, so stupid.
As you can tell, I was a little bit shook up. If you were paying attention, you might have heard the rapids in the background. That was literally, I finished them and I pulled up to this island just to recover. You know, the adrenaline was coursing, I was shaking, my eyes were kind of bugging out at times, and I needed just that time to decompress. And after the closest I think I've ever had to a real life and death situation, I realized that I was pushing myself a bit too hard. I was going a bit too fast. I needed to slow down and smell the roses, to say. In fact, that day, actually, I did my longest day in a kayak. It was 46 miles or so. And after that, I went, I need to slow down, talk to people, relax a bit more. You know, this is a trip about fun, not being stupid. And when you start to talk to people, even in my very, very broken Quebecois French, you meet some really great people that are really nice and really help you out. That's Jean-Francois and his son in front of him, and they gave me a ride through some tidal flats. I was pretty excited about it. And they saw me paddling, and they took me to this place, a little transient traveler's hut, you know, on stilts, right on the side of the St. Lawrence River. I mean, the St. Lawrence, especially the further down you get, when you get past Trois-Rivières, the old city, it becomes tidal as it gets closer to the sea. And here, I was only a day's travel outside of Quebec City, and there was about a 17 or 18-foot tide. And you may not think, oh, 17 or 18, that's not very big, but when the terrain is so flat, the river shrinks by like a mile. You know, it's a huge river, and it shrinks this huge amount. And so having to walk across all that gravel to get to this place was it was kind of rough. I was really glad they came along. But you can see those stilts up by my kayak, the windowed area off to the right, that's where you sleep. There's a big foam pads in there. And I remember waking up in the night for about 30 seconds and rolling over and going, wow, because the river had swelled with the tide and was under the shack. It was such an amazing experience, and it went sort of like, wow, about that quick. So this was the perfect springboard for me for the last couple days of the trip. I was 2 days to finish, and you know, it was such an amazing place. I was really glad that I had that time there to recover and kind of prepare myself for finishing, because you invest so much emotionally in large trips like this. And the river has about doubled or tripled in width with high tide. One was last night, and it's weird. It's my last day. I don't know. I'm not gonna start crying in front of the camera. Not. It's fun. It's crazy to think about. So here I am. I'm done. So I'm just gonna take it easy. It's the last day. It's the last day. I'm not gonna cry. And I have officially broken the curse of the last day, because I have this nice big tailwind and an ebb tide. It's been a good trip. Good trip. I'm all done. So cool. Au revoir, mon ami. So as you heard me say, the curse of the last day, and this was something that I've been mentally struggling with the last couple of years, is every trip I've seen to do, you know, about week-long solo trips before this, they've always ended in the worst weather, storms and thunder and waves and wind, and me being washed ashore on some remote beach and having to hike out. Not the best way. So to finish, you know, this big trip in such a nice fashion, an easy fashion, really, just kind of cruising downstream, it was a nice change. And the stream, the current, took me and led me to meet some really cool guys. So on the right is Michel, in the middle is Simone, and I met Michel on the river, only a few miles away from where I was going to stop, and he's a self-described ski bum. He owns a ski shop, and Simone is his carpenter, and he was working on his terrace. And Michel took us out to lunch right when I got there, and I was pretty smelly still, but we went out anyway. And as we're sitting there eating our plates of nachos and drinking our craft beer, we got talking. And 40 years ago, when Michel was 21, he did a 2 or 3 month bike trip through the Yukon and Alaska. This was before the days of mountain bikes or Gore-Tex or GPS or anything like that. He was off on his own, riding through the mountains. And he shared stories of these spiritual awakenings, these amazing experiences of being alone in the woods. And then Simone started talking. And after hitchhiking all across Canada, he ended up in Europe, where he hitchhiked all over the place. And 20 years ago, when he was 21, he found his way to India, where after hiking through the Himalaya, he bought a boat at the headwaters of the Ganges and spent 2 months all alone floating down the Ganges River. And people would take him in and feed him, and he witnessed festivals and met really amazing families and ferried people across the river. And I'm sitting here at this table, and they're kind of going between French and English. I'm trying to follow along. And the whole time I was thinking, all these experiences are so similar. The wild places, the water, the land, the mountains, the streams, the oceans. They bring about this change in people. And once you experience it, it carries with you for the rest of your life. And Michel kind of summed it up amazingly well really quickly. He said, really off the cuff, we're all supposed to have these adventures. Life is an up and down, but where things happen for a reason. And it was really inspiring to me to hear him say this. And he just said off the cuff, really quick in French, Providence, c'est la vie. Providence, things happen for a reason, c'est la vie, that's life. And I went, that's a good, kind of a good way to think about it, is things happen, good and bad, life, death, rapids, calm, flats. But it's life, and we got to take what comes. So, it might be, too optimistic at times, but sometimes we need to be that, and we need to go with the flow. So everyone, Providence, c'est la vie. Thank you.